We spoke with former NFL MVP, Super Bowl champion, Pro Football Hall of Famer, BYU all-time great Steve Young yesterday and discussed everything from Zach Wilson's perfect spot in the NFL to BYU's new offensive coordinator. And would Steve ever take the offensive line coach job at BYU? All things on the table. Here is that conversation with Steve Young on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Steve, BYU just finished a season with their fourth highest ranking in program history. Ironically enough, just behind your senior season in 1983 when you and the Cougars finished number 7.
Oh, you're going to bring up Baylor, aren't you? We're going to talk Baylor, and there was an opening game. All right, let's go there. That's fine. You know.
We'll leave Baylor out of it. I mean, we might talk about Jeff Grimes leaving for Baylor, but we won't bring up the specific game in 83. Let's focus on the happy stuff. 2020, BYU has one of their best seasons in program history. How would you define the 2020 BYU football season?
With that, in context for COVID and what it did to our schedule and what Tom had to do to pull off a season, and with the risks of COVID, not being able to get to games and having to delay games and move them around, and some were missed and some were scratched, and it was the greatest of all time because of what was accomplished. We re-energized and the national conversation around college football and BYU, we've been missing for a long time, and we're back in it. Now we're not back in it like heavy. We couldn't even, get more respect than Cincinnati, or, I never could figure that one out. So we're not all the way, but we're off our backs, and we're off the mat, and Zach did a great job of playing great quarterback, which always energizes everybody. I really appreciate how Kalani finally approached the offense and got out of this rushing game, try to win 17-13 and really just put it on Zach. It really, everything was better. And now we've established ourselves at ESPN, I think, very well. We always were liked, but now I think we established ourselves as, back to who BYU is, exciting, offensive, quarterback-centric kind of stuff. So, look, all of it, you can't tell me there was nothing negative. The only negative was how slow people were to perceive us as maybe a great team. And that's because of how far we were coming from behind. And, when they first ranked us at 15, it felt really a slight. Well, it was a slight because we were coming from so far away. Now we're not, this year, now the pressure's on, right? We'll have hopefully a more fulsome schedule this year, maybe the toughest in the country, and with a new quarterback. And now we've got to fill those shoes and fill that vacuum of expectations that have been built, because that's how great of a season it was, that we built some expectations, which is really cool. Sorry for the long answer, but it was a great year.
It was
always.
There was a lot to talk about. It's one of the funnest years that fans have had to be able to enjoy in a long time. And you mentioned Zach Wilson, and certainly his performance was fun. And we talked about BYU moving up the rankings each week. Zach Wilson was skyrocketing to the top of NFL draft boards. Give everybody an idea of why Zach is such a hot commodity among NFL circles and could potentially be the number 2 pick in the upcoming NFL draft.
Yeah. So, first of all, just from my perspective, Zach was given the opportunity finally with this offense to grow and to handle more and more. And A-Rod was giving him a lot of great opportunities, and every time Zach responded. It was kind of like, I'm trying to think of how you'd think about a good analogy, but the first one is just, the more weight you put on somebody, usually they slow down, usually they get bogged down. You ask them to do more from the data, and their mind gets racing, and they're not as effective, and they're not as present when they play. And the more it seemed like they gave Zach to do, the better he played. The more he excelled, the more he kind of blossomed. And the full measure of who Zach is as a player started to come out. And I think that's what grabbed everybody. the throws that were made, the decisions, and that, immediately what you saw early in the year was this is a kid that has, and look, you always compare younger players to someone who's already there or been there. They're like, oh, that's more like, Dan Marino or John Elway, or whatever it is. And that gives people context. This is a kid that has the talent and the presence of Patrick Mahomes. Like, there's nothing that Patrick does that Zach, I feel like Zach could go out and be scrambling left and be, someone pull his right arm and he puts the ball in his left and throw it. Like, I think Zach's that present, if that makes sense. And I think that he's, kind of has that sense that, I always think of Joe Montana when I think of this great quality where you can have 22 guys on the field and all the chaos going on and you are like chilling. Like, yeah, 22 guys is no big deal. And some people just from a spatial relationship of humans, it doesn't overwhelm you. And so Zach is a kid that guys that watch this for a living and that's their job is to pick quarterbacks. He jumped out at you. So once they get jumped out, I think it was maybe the Houston game where there's like, okay, wait a second, who is this kid? What are they? And I give A-Rod and I give Kalani a lot of credit for giving Zach the opportunity to showcase that. Now, showcase the offense, showcase BYU football, showcase how good we could be. It was all part of it, but it was the lean in from getting away from trying to win 17-13, which is truly Kalani's rootedness, right? Like, that's where he wants to be. He wants to just grind it out and just beat you. And it's so hard for him to make the transition. And I give him so much credit to go working against his nature and accepting and actually embracing and, this BYU way. He talked about it over the years. I would talk to him. Other guys were talking to him. Kalani, even if we lose, we got to do it the BYU way. We gain so much you can recruit off of it. We've talked on the show before. BYU is a certain thing. And so all of that worked well for Zach. And Zach, I got a call from a scout of the 49ers, and he was headed to the Boise game. And he said, this kid is amazing. And I go, I know. It's like the more they ask, the more you get. And then the Boise game, if you recall, was another great one. Mm-hmm. And made throws that you were like, that's what happened then. Once everyone started to watch him, then he was on, like, he knew he was on the show, and he was making throws. You're like, whoa, that was unbelievable. And that's when it really got going, because that's what pro scouts are watching for that. They watch for, okay, this kid now knows he's in the mix. This kid now knows that everybody's in the stands watching him. Everyone knows nationally they're watching him. And they want to see how he responds, because that usually is one of the gating issues for a quarterback. Can he kind of handle more and more? And every time and then it was the San Diego State game where it was cold, it was windy, and, a lot of quarterbacks kind of, close ranks a little bit, and they're not as kind of free flowing. And Zach's like, I don't know, what wind, what cold, what's the problem? And that was another little moment when people would call me and say, the kid just seems unflappable. And so that's why you start to think about what is his ceiling? What can't he do? And that's where you start talking about first round, then top of the first round, then why not with the Jets, number 2? Because as time goes on with that trajectory, right, up and to the right, where does that end? Where does it flatten? And there's nothing about Zach right now. People have tried to slow down the train. I mean, somebody reported that Zach wasn't, what was that little report that came out that he wasn't a leader, or that he was
spoiled. Yeah, spoiled rich kid
which is really a rotten thing to do. And I still, one of the worst things I ever did on TV was say something like that about Chris Sims, which I regret. I've told him thousands of times how sorry I was, and to his dad. His dad we were in the tunnel going out for the Super Bowl MVPs, and he wanted to fight, man. I was like, geez, Phil, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I mean, I'm from Greenwich, Connecticut. The mean streets of Greenwich, Connecticut. Like, I just said the wrong thing. I said the wrong thing. I screwed up. And but that's a nefarious comment to make to somebody. And I thought that Cougar Nation responded, and really, in many ways, the fans squelched that. The fans, they had enough anecdotes and experiences that were personal. They was like, this is not right. And I really appreciated that, because Zach needs that. He's going to be under attack a little bit here and there. There'll be forces out there that are going to want camps of other quarterbacks, other teams, people trying to manipulate the draft, trying to devalue him so they might fall to him. Fall to them. There's all this intrigue that's going to be going on over the next 3 or 4 months. And so Cougar Nation just, watch closely for any kind of slippage of the tongue from anybody about Zach Wilson. Look, it's not a perfect puzzle yet, because Zach is like, people will say, well, he wasn't the captain as a junior. He wasn't the captain. Usually the quarterback's the captain. Was there something there? And I tell people, well, you got to understand, there's so much maturity on a BYU team because of post missions and just the nature of what missions do for guys and the maturity you get. You're going to get 15 guys that are really, salt of the earth, great human beings, great leaders, energized guys in the locker room. And so, to be a captain at BYU is not just a foregone conclusion to be the quarterback. So that's my story there. But they're looking for anything. They're like, well, what about, one time we heard, because people need to know, Zach's come from nowhere in some ways. And how do we pressure test him before we make him the Ziggy Ansah of this draft?
Steve Young with us on, absolutely. Steve Young with us on BYU Sports Nation. Steve, when you look at all of the different landing spots that have been projected, the New York Jets at number 2, Atlanta at number 4, Carolina at number 8, Detroit at number 9, and then, of course, your 49ers at number 12. Where do you feel like the best fit is for Zach Wilson as he makes the transition from college football to the National Football League?
Well, I'm a big believer in Zach. And so, if I was the Jaguars, I'd take him. If I look about upsides, and that might be, Trevor Lawrence is going to go number 1. There's no question. So, I'm being a little bit crazy in saying that. But I'm just saying that the Jets are doing work on him, and they're going to have a tough time trying to talk themselves out of making him that pick. There's going to be some, being in New York and being with Justin and his championship run and how he played. It's going to be tough to, just the national media and everything else to make him the number 2 pick. But they're going to be hard pressed not to take him. I think by the time they work him out, go through the combines and see all the film and talk to everybody, it'll be hard to pass him. Now you look at the next few teams, none of them are probably quarterback focused. Maybe Atlanta ends up looking for, sorry about that. Maybe Atlanta looks for
it's live television.
Hey, maybe somebody's calling to ask you about Zach.
It's so live. I got to turn my phone off. That is just rude. Sorry. But you think it might be Atlanta? If they do something with Matt Ryan, if someone tries to move up, and then Detroit, what they do with Matthew Stafford and Detroit. But if they pass Detroit, if he gets past 7, it gets super cool and interesting, because the teams that start showing up, you see San Francisco at 12. I'm guessing you think, oh, Steve knows he's got some insight. I promise you, I have no insight about the 49ers and their thoughts about the draft. But I do know that the 49ers are serious about looking at Zach Wilson. So if he could get within range of 12 to 9 and they could move around, that would be super cool. Denver with John Elway, now John's the president, but I think no one would pass Zach up who's looking for a quarterback. Nobody. So if it's Atlanta, it's Atlanta. If it's Detroit, it's Detroit. And then if somebody could move up from New England to San Francisco to Denver to all those teams in the middle of the pack are all desperate for quarterbacks. They would do anything to get to Zach. So that's how that's going to play out.
Steve, you've mentioned the offense for BYU a couple of times, and now BYU has a new offensive coordinator. Aaron Roderick is now the guy that's going to be in charge of the offense, and you've been on the show very vocal about how much you like what you see from him. What do you make of that hire and what it means for the BYU offense moving forward?
I'm ecstatic at that hire. I am overjoyed. I am. I just, I've been arguing for a long time that BYU needs to be related to its past because we can use it as a tool in, like I said, in recruiting, in pregame speeches for Kalani, for how people see us. And I said, even if we lose, throwing it around, we still are BYU. There's something to be, it's like Pittsburgh in defense. It's like there's very few in Steelers, there's very few places in football, college and pros, where you have an image that you can hold on to and use in its past to use for all the really cool purposes. So A-Rod, I loved what he did. Like he would see something Andy Reid ran, that Patrick Mahomes did a week or two before, and then they'd run it. And of course it worked because Zach can handle that. That's what was so cool about this year. I was like, A-Rod, I'd see something on a game on the weekend with the pros, and it was a super cool play that Sean Payton had, or that Kyle Shanahan had put together, or Sean McVay. And then all of a sudden, BYU was running it and just ripping people with it. And I'm like, oh, A-Rod, I love you, man. This is awesome. Because it's not plagiarism. It's really just seeing you have a guy that can do it in Zach, and a lot of great talent around. And look at think about what happened at back, at tight end. And, people just blossomed because he was calling plays that allowed for that full measure of someone's creation. Like, it's just really, you think about it kind of spiritually, like people want to see how good they can be. And I love that A-Rod gave people that opportunity to see how good they could be. He gave Zach that opportunity. When Zach goes in the top 10 this spring, he's got to go hug A-Rod because A-Rod gave him that opportunity. And so do all the guys on offense, because he's got an innovative young mind. If he keeps it up, they'll be looking at, because pro football is looking for young, innovative minds, offensive minds. And the Jets would love one right now. You go down the list, everybody would love one. Houston needs one desperately. So anyway, there's that for A-Rod. I don't want to overstate it, but I don't want to understate it either. And it better not change, A-Rod.
Steve Young is watching. Hey, we're talking about a guy from the mean streets of Greenwich, Connecticut. You don't want to double cross this dude, right? Right? Yeah, you're
not
watching.
Mess with me. I'm on the Stanford-Greenwich border, man. It's tough over there.
Steve, let's finish with this. It's been so fun to watch a number of former BYU Cougars flourish in the NFL, and it feels like a majority of those guys are still playing in the playoffs, between Dirty Dan, Daniel Sorensen with the Chiefs, and Jamal Williams with the Packers, and Taysom Hill of the Saints, of course, among others. Which Cougar still playing in the NFL playoffs do you expect to make the biggest impact on what they hope is a hopeful run to a Super Bowl championship?
Well, Dirty Dan, he's got it. He's going to be in the mix because so is Kansas City. I don't know who beats Kansas City other than themselves. So, you're on the biggest stage and you make a big play, and that's going to be world famous. Taysom's the one that can make the biggest difference. And you saw the other day when he didn't make the difference, right? When the ball got tipped, and that was going to be should have been touched. I don't know where that ball was going to end up. I love that Sean has more confidence in Taysom. Now take the ball and throw it, which he earned very nicely when he played the few games that Drew was out. And so I think Taysom's the one that clearly can make a huge difference in this run, especially, they're going to probably end up in Green Bay when it's cold, and there's going to need some cool plays that sophisticated running stuff that Taysom can do that can really help the Saints. So I suspect that Taysom's going to be, if Taysom has a great postseason, the Saints are probably going to be in good shape.
Steve, we always enjoy talking with you. It's nice to talk BYU football, man. So let's continue to do this, and we'll pass along the message to A-Rod.
I just hope, I think we've got everything in place, right? We've got, we got to make sure we always have a quarterback or two running around that are playing great football. We got to keep expanding and, keep recruiting. We have not been great recruiters. I'm sorry, that's just a fact. We're losing great athletes out of Utah, and we have for 10 years, that are headed to other schools in the Pac-12. And with this year, we can go recruit. We can go argue that you're going to be, you can go pro. You can Zach going in the top half of the first round tells you that, BYU's back on the map. So we got to take advantage of it. We can't let it slide. I know we get it. But anyway, ask your question. I mean, you can see I think about BYU football way too much.
It's not possible, Steve.
No,
you can't think about it too much.
Good. In fact, if you want to come recruit and coach the offensive line, there's an opening there too. So throw your name in the mix.
You do not want me coaching offensive line because I hate blocking schemes. That's what I say. Trent Dilfer's he's up for some college football jobs. He's been in high school coaching, doing a great job in Nashville, Tennessee, at Lipscomb Academy, and he's my brother Tom. They love football the way that I don't. I love playing quarterback. I love that it takes every inch of yourself. It takes every spiritual, emotional, mental, physical piece of yourself to be any good at it. I love to be engrossed in playing quarterback. I love that. But when you want to start talking about blocking schemes and angles and I gloss over. I would be a terrible coach. I don't care. Just watch my film and do it like that. I don't know.
Let me just go out and score touchdowns.
Yeah, you would not want me as the offensive line coach. I can promise you that. I'd be like, guys, just get it done. Just whatever you need to protect the quarterback. Figure it out. Right.
Fair enough.
That would be my coaching tip.
We'll keep you as our muscle on BYU Sports Nation as our West Coast analyst.
I'm the ICBM missile. Anything that needs to get done, just send me out. I'm ready to go. We didn't even talk about Big Five conferences too. We've got to start figuring that out too. By the way, so that'll be next time we talk.
I love it, Steve. Great to catch up with you, my friend. Hope 2021 is going well for you, and let's do this again soon.
All right, let's go.
Steve Young on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First,